I'm not changing my lifestyle. I'm 4 or 5 women every day of my life.
From Ric Flair, who famously claimed he had been with over 10,000 women, to Bret Hart, who admitted in his autobiography to having been with hundreds, and even Edge, who was reportedly involved in a controversy with a co-worker's girlfriend while still married, these WWE legends are among those linked to the most women, with their stories surfacing through interviews, books, and media reports. Starting with Ric Flair, the man who seemed to treat infidelity almost like a championship he had to defend at all costs.
I just was wild with women.
Ric Flair, known as the Nature Boy and a 16-time world champion, is also famous for claiming he had been with over 10,000 women. And while he later said he regretted making that statement, it wasn't because it was untrue but because he realized his grandchildren would one day hear it. A detail that shows Flair wasn't just exaggerating for attention or cameras, but was speaking in a way that reflected how seriously he took that image.
Remember, girls, remember, when Ric Flair's in town, showtime!
He was basically just stating the numbers out loud, and his marriage history reads like a career highlight reel with 5 wives across 5 decades, starting with Leslie Goodman from 1971 to 1983, with whom he had 2 children, followed by Elizabeth Harrell, who stayed with him through his wildest years from 1983 to 2006 and gave him Charlotte Flair and the late Reed Flair. Then Tiffany Vandemark for a brief 3-year marriage, followed by Jackie Beams from 2009 to 2014, a union marked by domestic issues and serious allegations, and finally his 5th and current marriage to Wendy Barlow in 2018, a former WCW valet who stood by him through major health scares. While throughout all of this the affairs were so frequent they almost became background noise in his career, with multiple divorces directly tied to his infidelity, and even though Flair expressed regret later in life, the record had already been set. If Ric Flair stands as the clear king of this list based on the sheer numbers he claimed, the next name is someone who actually documented everything in detail, Bret Hart. Because while most wrestlers let rumors float without comment, Bret Hart chose to lay it all out in his autobiography Hitman, where the 5-time WWF champion did not just hint at cheating but openly described it, estimating he had been involved in hundreds of affairs during his time on the road, especially during frequent trips to Japan, which he described as a place full of constant temptations, presenting it as part of the wrestling lifestyle where almost every man on the road was doing the same. Yet he did not fully hide behind that reasoning, admitting to real guilt and acknowledging the damage caused, and looking at his personal life. He was married 3 times, with his first marriage to Julie Smadu lasting from 1982 to 2002 while these affairs quietly continued, and his second wife Cinzia Rota, an Italian woman he met during one of those relationships, became his spouse from 2004 to 2007. His third and current marriage to Stephanie Washington began in 2010, and is widely seen as the stable chapter his personal life had never experienced before. And if Bret was the one who chose to write everything down, then Shawn Michaels, the Heartbreak Kid, was the one who lived it openly in front of everyone and somehow managed to emerge without lasting damage. Because during the 1990s he was not just a top in-ring performer but also one of the most unpredictable and controversial figures behind the scenes, with the clique era becoming notorious for politics, partying, and rumors of relationships with many women across the wrestling circuit. His first marriage to Teresa would lasted from 1988 to 1994, while his second marriage to Rebecca Kersey, a former WCW Nitro girl, began in 1999 and continues to this day with 2 children. And the contrast between those 2 phases of his life was stark, especially around 1996 when Michaels was linked to Tammy's YTCH, known in WWE as Sunny, in a situation that caused major backstage tension and drew serious attention to both of their careers.
The worst I can think of is the thing with Shawn. Screwing with somebody's wife or very close girlfriend, or even if she wants to, that's not the litmus test.
Rumors of dozens of other relationships during Shawn Michaels' prime years circulated for decades, none officially confirmed but many widely believed. And then there is the claim made by Bret Hart involving Michaels and Vince McMahon, an allegation denied by those close to the situation but one that has never fully disappeared from discussion. And what eventually changed everything for Michaels was his turn toward religion, something not everyone on this list experienced as others continued living the fast-paced life of moving from match to match and city to city while surrounded by co-workers who read like a list of WWE divas. And that brings us to CM Punk, whose story stands out because he built his entire identity around discipline with a straight-edge lifestyle. No alcohol, no drugs, and clean living. Yet when it came to relationships within WWE he showed a very different side. as before settling down with AJ Lee in 2013 and marrying her in 2014, he had been linked with many women from the roster, with confirmed relationships including Mickie James in 2003, Maria Kanellis from 2005 to 2007, Kelly Kelly in 2007, Beth Phoenix in 2008, and Lita from 2009 into the early 2010s, while rumors suggested his total number of partners could exceed 20. Including names from the independent scene like Tracy Brooks and Daphne, even before he officially joined WWE. And this pattern of dating co-workers often created real backstage tension, especially when breakups occurred in an environment where everyone still had to work together the next day and act normal, with reports also mentioning friction between Punk and AJ Lee during their marriage that went beyond typical disagreements. And if CM Punk's story is filled with contradictions, the next name is Kevin Nash, whose reputation became almost a character of its own, known as Big Daddy Cool, Diesel, and Big Sexy. A man whose image was built around being irresistible, and according to many backstage reports that image was not far from reality, as Nash has been married to Tamara Nash since 1988 in a relationship that survived multiple separations and at least one confirmed affair, involving WCW Nitro girl Chai and reportedly lasting from 1996 to 2002, a 6-year period during which he was still married.
About my relationship with Kevin. And it started off as a friendship, and we were both in relationships. He was in a marriage, and they separated legally, and then I ended up breaking off my relationship.
He later admitted to the affair, and the couple reportedly worked through it, with Nash crediting Tamara's strength, especially during his struggles with addiction. While rumors of possible relationships with Stacy Keibler and Tori Wilson continued to circulate in wrestling media for years, never fully confirmed but also never strongly denied, keeping Nash at the center of those stories. And his Big Sexy nickname was not just for merchandise but often seen as a reflection of how he lived. During that time, with the fact that his marriage survived all of it being almost as surprising as the stories themselves, and while Nash mostly kept his situation limited to one long-running affair, the next name reportedly spread things across an entire locker room and even had a co-worker speak openly about it, Batista, who went through 3 marriages and built a backstage reputation that, according to former colleague the Great Khali, involved a large portion of the WWE Divas roster, as Batista was first married to Glenda Bautista from 1990 to 1998, having 2 daughters with her, then married Angie Bautista from 1998 to 2006, a relationship that ended directly because of his affair with Melina Perez, which became widely known backstage around 2006 and 2007. And later his third marriage to Sarah Jade lasted from 2015 to 2019. While in between these relationships, he was also linked in various reports to names like Kelly Kelly and Rosa Mendez, with Khali's public claim that Batista had been involved with many divas, creating major discussion in wrestling circles, even though most names beyond Melina and Kelly Kelly remained unconfirmed. And what stands out about Batista's story is how long it lasted, stretching across decades, 3 marriages, and even 2 separate careers in wrestling and Hollywood. And if Batista's story was spread out over time, the next one happened in a single explosive moment that affected multiple careers at once. Edge, whose real name is Adam Copeland, built a Hall of Fame legacy as the Rated R superstar, but the most controversial chapter of his life was not part of any scripted storyline. As in 2005, it was revealed that he was having an affair with Lita while she was in a long-term relationship with Matt Hardy, and while Edge himself was married to Lisa Ortiz, the fallout was massive, with Matt Hardy discovering it and posting about it online, causing the story to spread across wrestling forums and mainstream media faster than any planned WWE storyline ever could.
And the message said, "Hey, it's me, and this is killing me. I can't go without talking to you. If you're gonna stay with Matt and not be with me, then I'm lost. I don't know what I'm gonna do."
The controversy sparked the most intense crowd reaction of the entire decade, and somehow Edge managed to turn it into a heel persona that became one of the greatest in company history, as WWE used the real-life scandal as part of a storyline, with the audience's genuine anger toward Edge and Lita creating must-watch television, making that chapter such a defining moment in his off-screen legacy that it almost overshadowed a career full of championship success. And while Edge's story played out loudly and quickly in front of everyone, the next name is very different because his story was much quieter, yet the details speak for themselves. Jake Roberts, known as Jake the Snake, a man considered one of the most psychologically complex figures in professional wrestling history, whose personal life mirrored that complexity as he was married at least 4 times, but the number that truly stands out is 8. Referring to his 8 children from multiple relationships across a lifetime. repeatedly affected and broken apart by addiction.
When you're able to be satisfied in life with a drug or a drink and nothing else. That's all I cared about. How much coke did I have? Because when I ran out of dope, everything else was gone.
The road years were harsh for Jake Roberts in every way, as substance abuse that eventually took over his life also fueled a pattern of reckless personal choices, leaving a long trail of broken relationships. But his journey to sobriety, publicly supported by DDP yoga founder Diamond Dallas Page, brought real and lasting change, and remarkably, Roberts eventually reconciled with Cheryl Hagood, his second wife, and remarried her in 2022, a development that turns the story from tragedy into a hard-earned second chance. While the 8 children from his various relationships remain the clearest proof of how many women were part of his life during those chaotic years, showing that Jake's story is ultimately one of survival. And the next story is a tale of pure, unfiltered excess, the kind that could only exist in the 1980s wrestling world, Hulk Hogan, who in that decade was arguably the most famous professional wrestler on the planet, and possibly the most recognized athlete in America. And with that fame came a personal life constantly out of control, even when it looked perfect on television. As Hogan married Linda Claridge in 1983, and for over 2 decades presented the image of the all-American wrestling family with 2 children and a reality TV show. But that marriage ended in 2009 partly due to an affair with Christian Plant. And he married Jennifer McDaniel from 2010 to 2021 before his third marriage to Sky Daly began in 2023 and lasted until his death. Yet it was the 2012 sex tape scandal involving Heather Clem, the wife of radio personality Bubba the Love Sponge, that defined his post-wrestling infidelity narrative, as the tape was released without his consent, leading to a lawsuit against Gawker, which Hogan ultimately won. While the 1980s flings and Hollywood-era rumors add more layers to the story, though most remain unconfirmed, showing that Hogan's excess was truly cinematic, and the next man built his legend in the most visible spotlight in wrestling, yet managed to keep parts of his personal life hidden for years, The Undertaker. Mark Calloway spent over 3 decades crafting one of the most airtight and impenetrable characters in wrestling history, as The Undertaker never broke kayfabe, avoided talk shows, and rarely smiled for cameras, yet his personal life proved surprisingly eventful, marrying Jody Lynn in 1989 in a union that produced 1 son and lasted until 1999, then marrying Sarah Frank in 2000, whose name he even had tattooed on his throat and with whom he had 2 daughters before divorcing in 2007, and his current wife, Michelle McCool, a former WWE Divas champion, became his spouse in 2010, and together they have 1 daughter, with a transition from Sarah to Michelle reportedly causing backstage tension due to rumors that the relationship with McCool began while he was still married to Sarah, which both parties denied, though McCool faced heat from some roster members over the situation. And for a man whose entire professional persona was built on mystery and darkness, the fact that his personal life involved behind-the-scenes drama almost feels like a storyline reveal, showing that beneath the hat and the coat, the dead man led a very human life, as The Undertaker's story is ultimately about what was hidden, while the next man's story is about what everyone could see, a possessive and jealous dynamic that played out in front of millions of fans every single week. Randy Savage, the Macho Man, and Miss Elizabeth are remembered as one of professional wrestling's great love stories, but also as one of its cautionary tales, as Savage married Elizabeth Hewlett, known to fans as Miss Elizabeth, in 1984, and their real-life relationship was woven into WWE storylines for years, making their on-screen reunion at WrestleMania 7 after a scripted breakup one of the most emotional moments in company history. Yet behind the scenes, Savage's jealousy and possessiveness were intense, reportedly monitoring who Elizabeth spoke to, controlling her interactions with other wrestlers, and creating an isolating environment, with the couple divorcing in 1992 and Elizabeth's life after Savage ending in tragedy. While Savage's 1980s Playboy reputation suggested multiple girlfriends, though specifics are sparse compared to others on this list, and his second marriage to Lynn Payne in 2010 lasted until his death in 2011 from an atherosclerosis-related heart attack while driving, showing that his story was largely about possession and control, whereas the next man's romantic troubles played out just as visibly but with a creative twist that turned personal setbacks into new characters. Bray Wyatt, whose real name was Wyndham Rotunda, the mind behind Bray Wyatt, The Fiend, and several other personas, lived a personal life that became very public and messy in 2017 when it was revealed that while married to Samantha Rotunda since 2012, with whom he had 2 daughters, he had been having an affair. with WWE ring announcer JoJo Offerman, leading Samantha to file for divorce citing the affair in widely documented filings, and Wyatt went on to have 2 children with JoJo and was engaged to her at the time of his death in 2023 at just 36 years old from myocarditis, a heart condition he developed following a severe COVID-19 infection, casting a tragic shadow over everything that came before. Yet whatever the circumstances of how the relationship began, it clearly became something genuine and lasting. Died engaged to JoJo with 4 children between the 2 families, leaving behind a complicated legacy marked by a genuinely devastating loss for wrestling, as Wyatt's story ended in tragedy, and the next man's story unfolded like a slow-motion train wreck that worsened with every new headline. Steve Austin, Stone Cold, who embodied the Attitude Era with beer, stunners, and middle fingers, representing late 90s rebellion. Yet off-screen his personal life was far darker than the highlight reel suggested, having been married 4 times. First to Catherine Burris from 1990 to 1992, then to Jeannie Clark, better known as British wrestler Lady Blossom, from 1992 to 1999, with whom he had 2 daughters, and finally to Deborah Marshall from 2000 to 2003, a marriage that ended amid domestic violence charges filed by Deborah in 2002.
I hung up the phone. I started crying like a baby, because she used to sound exactly like I do. For better for worse, without the 4-letter words, she had my same accent.
Austin was charged, pleaded no contest, and received a fine along with community service, later addressing the situation in interviews and admitting that the marriage had been volatile, and his 4th and current marriage to Kristen Ferris began in 2009 and has reportedly been stable, while Austin also admitted in various interviews to affairs during his road years, framing them as part of the wrestling lifestyle without providing specifics, making the domestic violence chapter an unavoidable part of his story that sits in the middle of an otherwise celebrated legacy and forces a more complicated view of who Steve Austin was when the cameras weren't on him, with his story marked by that darkness, whereas the next man's story is defined by sheer volume, as John Cena spent nearly 2 decades as WWE's Ultimate Company man, the face of the franchise who never turned heel and whose merchandise kept the lights on, yet despite his efforts to keep his personal life private, it became one of the most talked about in WWE history, marrying Elizabeth Habito in 2009 and divorcing in 2012, followed by a long-term relationship with Nikki Bella from 2012 to 2018, which included a high-profile WrestleMania proposal and dominated celebrity tabloid coverage until ending when Cena decided he did not want children, a choice Nikki has spoken about publicly, and he married Shea Shariatsadeh in 2020, while rumored hookups over the years with WWE talent including Mickie James, Kelly Kelly, Victoria, AJ Lee, and Barbie Blank circulated extensively in wrestling media, though none were officially confirmed, making the pattern of rumors around Cena especially notable given the image he presented publicly. The ultimate role model, the guy doing Make-A-Wish visits and living by a strict code, John Cena's story is defined by the stark contrast between that image and the whisper network of locker room rumors, creating a cognitive dissonance wrestling fans have pondered for years, showing that his narrative is really about the gap between image and reality, whereas the next man's story is about a reputation built slowly over decades in the shadows of the Memphis circuit and the WWE announce table. Randy Orton, a 3rd-generation wrestler, grandson of Bob Orton Sr. and son of Cowboy Bob Orton, who arrived in WWE with both a genetic gift for the business and a reputation for reckless personal behavior that took years to overcome, as his early career was marked by stories of groupie hookups and locker room misconduct that led to multiple suspensions and disciplinary actions from WWE, with rumored romantic links over the years including Stacy Keibler, Candice Michelle, Layla, Kelly Kelly, and JoJo, none officially confirmed but widely circulated, marrying Samantha Spino in 2007 with whom he had 1 daughter before divorcing in 2013, and later marrying Kim Kessler in 2015, producing another daughter and marking a seemingly settled chapter that his early career gave no hint of, with a 14-time world champion's personal transformation mirroring his in-ring evolution from an undisciplined young prospect who almost derailed his career repeatedly to a methodical veteran who knows exactly what he's doing. While the early groupie stories and locker room rumors still linger, though far removed from who Orton appears to be now, making his story one of growing up.